Good evening, one and all. We welcome you all to the international webinar series on holistic health, well-being, and sustainable development 2022, commemorating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, nation celebrating 75 years of independence and United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs 2015 to 2030, as part of awareness and campaigns in collaboration with Sri Holistic Health Foundation India and Sri Research Institute Center for Art, Sciences and Wellbeing. Before we start our sessions, let's take the blessings of Almighty.
कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः.
With the blessings of Almighty, we shall continue to today's sessions. Today is National Press Day. 16th of November is a symbolic of free and responsible press in India. This was a day on which the Press Council of India started functioning as a moral watchdog to ensure that not only did the press maintain the high standards expected from this powerful medium, but also that it was not fettered by the influence of threats of any extraneous factors. Though there are several press or media councils world over, the Press Council of India is a unique entity in as much as this is the only body to exercise an authority even over the instruments of the state in its duty to safeguard the independence of the press. Recommending the establishment of a press council in 1956, the first press commission had concluded that the best way of maintaining professional ethics in journalism would be to bring into existence a body with statutory authority of people, principally connected with industry, whose duty it would be to arbitrate to end the Press Council of India was established, and the body that has evolved since November 16th, 1966 has not believed the objective. November 16 therefore personifies a responsible and free press in the country. All those who did cherish it so commemorate the day in the sidelines of the event, the conferring of the National Awards for Excellence in Journalism, and mark the occasion souvenir is released. So the previous topics, along with its background note on which deliberation has helped on the occasion of National Press Day current to previous year, it was Who is Not Afraid of Media in 2021 on National Press Day 2021, and role of media during COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on media. on National Press Day 2020. Let's look at a brief introduction about Press Council of India. The Press Council of India is a statutory quasi-judicial autonomous authority re-established in the year 1979 under the Act of the Parliament, Press Council Act 1978, with the twofold objects of preserving the freedom of press by maintaining and improving standards of newspapers and the news agencies in India. It was the first set up in 1966 under the Indian Press Council Act 1965 on the recommendations of the first Press Commission with the identical twin objects. The 1965 Act was, however, repealed in 1975 and the Press Council was abolished during emergency. Thereafter, a new act was enacted on the similar lines of the Act of 1965 and the Press Council was re-established under it in the year 1979. The council is a corporate body having perpetual succession comprising of chairman and 28 members, while the chairman has by convention been a retired judge of Supreme Court of India who is nominated by a committee consisting of a chairman, the Council of States from Rajya Sabha, Speaker of the House of People, Lok Sabha, and a person elected among themselves by 28 members of the council. Of the 28 members, 13 represent the working journalists, of whom 6 are to be editors of newspapers and remaining 7 are to be working journalists other than editors. 6 members are from among persons who own or carry on the business of management of newspapers, 2 of each representing the big, medium, and small newspapers. 1 is from among the persons who manage news agencies. It has 5 members as representatives of the 2 houses of parliament, 3 nominated by the Speaker of Lok Sabha and 2 nominated by the Chairman of the Rajya Sabha to represent readers' interest. It has 3 members nominated from the University Grants Commission, Bar Council of India, and Sahitya Academy, representing the fields of education, law, and literature, respectively. The objects of the Press Council of India, as embodied in Section 13 of the Act, are to preserve the freedom of press and to maintain and improve the standards of newspapers and news agencies in India. The Act also confers an advisory role on the Council in that it can either sumoto or on a reference made by it to it by the government under Section 13(2) of the Act, undertake studies and express its opinion in regard to any bill, legislation, law, or other matters concerning the press and convey its opinion to the government or the persons concerned. Also, in the matters of public importance concerning its statutory responsibilities, the Council may sumoto take cognizance and constitute a special committee to make an on-spot inquiry. In furtherance of its objects defined under Section 13 of the Act, some of the important functions which the Press Council is required to perform are to help newspapers and news agencies to maintain their independence, to build up a code of conduct for newspapers, news agencies, and journalists in accordance with high professional standards, to ensure on the part of newspapers, news agencies, and journalists the maintenance of high standards of public taste and foster a due sense of both the rights and responsibilities, to keep under review any development likely to restrict the supply and dissemination of news of public interest and importance, to promote a proper functional relationship among all classes of persons engaged in the production or publication of newspapers or in news agencies, and to concern itself with development such as concentration of or other aspects of ownership of newspapers and news agencies which may affect the freedom of the press. The raison d'etre of this body is rooted in the concept that it's in a democratic society, the press needs to be simultaneously free and responsible. Thus, it acts in a higher domain of ethical values and standards. In furtherance to this aspect, has been framing up code of conduct for newspapers, news agencies, and the journalists in confirming the high moral and professional standards. Its purpose is not only to act as a watchdog on the press, but also to enthuse a new perspective into journalistic fraternity. The council constantly assists to keep the press devoid of unethical writings, and also the council expends its moral authority to instill ethics into the journalistic sodality, which is always higher plane than law. The council discharges its function primarily through adjudications on the complaint cases received by it, either against the press for violation of journalistic ethics or by the press for interference with its freedom, where the council is satisfied after inquiry that a newspaper or a news agency has offended against the standard of journalistic ethics or public taste, or that an editor or a working journalist has committed any professional misconduct, the council may warn, admonish, or censor them or disapprove of their conduct. The council is also empowered to make such observations as it may think fit in the respect of conduct of any authority, including government, for interfering with the freedom of press, so prescribed under Section 4. The decisions of the council are final and cannot be questioned in any court of law. The council, being a body set up under the Act of Parliament, gets a substantial part of its fund by the way of grants in aid from the central government after due appropriation by the Parliament. As also, it has its own funds by way of fee collected by from newspapers on a graded structure and other receipts. So the vision of the Press Council of India, as embodied in Section 13 of the Act of 1978, are to preserve the freedom of press and to maintain and improve standards of newspapers and news agencies in India. And the mission of Press Council of India is to help newspapers and news agencies to maintain their independence, to build up a code of conduct of newspapers, news agencies, and journalists in accordance with high professional standards, to ensure on the part of newspaper, news agencies, and journalists the maintenance of high standards of public taste and foster a due sense of both rights and responsibilities, to keep a review any development likely to restrict the supply and dissemination of news of public interest and importance, to promote a proper functional relationship among all the classes of persons engaged in the production of publication of newspapers or news agencies, and to concern itself with developments such as concentration of or other aspects of ownership of newspapers and news agencies which may affect the independence of the press. As already discussed, the PCI, that is Press Council of India, is headed by chairman and a down hierarchy below the chairman, secretary, and below secretary, deputy secretary, under deputy secretary, under secretaries, 4 under secretaries, under each under secretary, a section officer, and also Assistant Director Official Language, that is Raj Bhasha, and under each section officer, under secretary, we have various departments like administration, accounts, complaints and references, meetings, levy, editorial, legal, IT, library, PRAB, and Raj Bhasha. This is an organogram, the structure of PCI in brief. And as mentioned earlier, National Awards for Excellence in Journalism, the Press Council of India has been mandated by the Parliament to improve the standards of journalism and maintain its freedom. This it has been ensuring through its adjudications as well as pronouncements and reports on specific issues to encourage the media to pursue its duties effectively without fear or favor, following the dictum of freedom with responsibility. The Press Council of India, as the only statutory authority enjoying such mandate, has instituted national awards to honor journalists excelling in print journalism in various fields from 2012 onwards. Whereas one main award, Raja Ram Mohan Roy National Award for Excellence in Journalism, in honor of one of the greatest reformer journalists of the country, carries a cash award of rupees 1 lakh, a plaque, and a citation. The remaining awards in the fields decided every year carry 50,000 rupees each, a plaque and a citation. The Press Council of India honors journalists selected by the jury council for having excelled in various fields on the occasion of National Press Day, that is every year on 16th November. And as usual, today, National Press Day has been observed and this year Information and Broadcasting Minister Anurag Thakurji has been the chief guest at the National Press Day celebration in Delhi today. And it was grandly commemorated and celebrated. An independent and free press is one of the four pillars of a strong democracy. To highlight the importance of a free and independent press in India, National Press Day is celebrated and commemorated on 16th of November every year. The Press Council of India is a free acting body which is celebrated and also its honor its contributions to making India a democracy. While the media acts as one of the pillars of democratic nation, the journalists working in various media houses, print and broadcast, act as a mirror who reports and stories reflect various aspects of our society as they are and with complete truth. The 16th of November portrays the press freedom, duties, and responsibilities towards the citizens. And today, various activities are also organized, like various seminars, workshops, webinars, to raise multiple issues faced by Indian press, as well as to try to educate the citizens on various matters, such as Right to Information Act, the role of approach of media while facing various sorts of crisis, the duty of Indian press to promote the notion of their fundamental duty to make the citizens more aware, and finally, relaying proper measures to the citizens in the times of crisis. Apart from tackling the issues mentioned earlier, it also aims to educate people about the significance of free and just media in a democratic nation for a day or two. Additionally, the day is also celebrated to ensure media has a clear vision of its purpose and responsibility. The current chairman of the Press Council of India is Justice Chandramouli Kumar Prasad, who has been appointed for the second term. The Indian media has to face many challenges, and in recent years, these challenges have taken a massive toll on the proper regulation of the news. Issues like lack of transparency, getting bribed by the rich, and major political influence, death threats to the media workers, and direct influence from major political parties are also some challenges faced by the Indian media. Recently, we have also commemorated a day where end impunity against the journalists. We have seen so many journalists were threatened, and almost more than 75% of the women journalists across the world are being abused, threatened, and harassed online. And it has been a quite challenging job for both men and women working across the world in media. And these challenges question the very reason that the press exists and thus is a massive threat to the democratic structure of the country and the world. The RTI, that is Right to Information Act of 2005, states that any citizen of the India has a right to request information from the body of the government, and that body has a time limit of 30 days to reply to that request. Additionally, when dealing with cases regarding life and liberty, the government body has to respond within the time frame of 48 hours. Finally, the Act also states that these government bodies must keep a computerized record of this information and make them available to the public so that any citizen can access them with maximum ease. Therefore, RTI is a very important part for journalists and also the citizens. So with this, we shall conclude this commemoration. And today, that is 15th of yesterday, 15th of November, is also commemorated as Day of 8 billion. It's related to the population. On 15th November 2022, the world's population is projected to reach 8 billion people, and a milestone in human development. This unprecedented growth is due to gradual increase in human lifespan owing to the improvements in public health, nutrition, personal hygiene, and medicine. It is also a result of high and persistent levels of fertility in some countries. While it took the global population 12 years to grow from 7 to 8 billion, it will take approximately 15 years until 2037 for it to reach 9 billion, a sign that the overall growth rate of the global population is slowing. The milestone is an occasion to celebrate the diversity and advancements while considering humanity's shared responsibility for the planet. Countries with highest fertility levels tend to be those with the lowest income per capita. Global population growth has therefore over time became increasingly concentrated among the world's poorest countries, most of them which are sub-Saharan Africa. In these countries, sustained rapid population growth can thwart the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, which remain the world's best pathway towards a happy and healthy future. Even through population growth magnifies the environmental impact of economic development, rising per capita incomes are the main driver of unsustainable patterns of production and consumption. The countries with the highest per capita consumption of material resources and emissions of greenhouse gas emissions tend to be those where income per capita is higher, not those where the population is growing rapidly. So, meeting the objectives of the Paris Agreement to limit global temperature rise while achieving the SDGs critically depends on curbing unsustainable patterns of production and consumption. Yet, slower population growth over many decades could help to mitigate further accumulation of environmental damage in the second half of the current century. So the UNFPA 8 billion strong campaign marks the milestone day of 8 billion by sharing educational material on 8 trends for a world of 8 billion people: slowing growth, fewer children, longer lives, people on the move, aging population, women outliving men, two pandemics, and shifting centers are the 8 trends for a world of 8 billion people. So, what does the population growth mean for sustainability? And how does it impact the sustainable development? On 15th November, the world will mark a major milestone as the world population reaches 8 billion. Asia and Africa drove much of the growth and is expected to drive the next billion in 2037. While Europe's contribution will be negative due to declined population, India, the largest contributor to the 8 billion, 177 million, will surpass China, which has the second largest contributor at 73 million, and whose contribution to the next billion will be negative as the world's most populous nation by 2023. And we have seen 8 trends for a world of 8 billion people as slowing growth, fewer children, longer lives, people on the move, aging population, women outliving men, two pandemics, and shifting centers. The World Population Prospectus 2022 is a 27th edition of the official United Nations population estimates and projections. It presents population estimates from 1950 to the present for 237 countries or areas, underpinned by the analysis of historical demographic trends. The latest assessment considers the result of 1,758 national population census conducted between 1950 and 2022, as well as information from vital registration systems from 890 nationally representative sample surveys. The 2022 revision also presents population projections to the year 2100 that reflect a range of plausible outcomes at the global, regional, and national levels. For the first time, the estimates and the projections are presented in 1 year intervals of age and the time instead of 5 year intervals used previously. Global population growth and sustainable development probes the linkages between the global population growth and social, economic, and environmental dimensions of sustainable development. The report examines how the current rapid growth of the human population is a consequence of the demographic transition from high to low levels of the mortality and fertility. The report reviews the connections between population growth and the key aspects of social and economic development, including poverty, hunger, and malnutrition, health, education, gender equality, economic growth, and decent work. It also explores the contribution of a global population increase to environmental degradation, including climate change. The report is also a part of series on major demographic trends being published by Population Division of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. It is and reports of series examine the complex relationships linking demographic process to the social and economic development and environmental change. Due to time constraints, we are not discussing in detail. Today, we are also commemorating International Day of Tolerance. In 1996, the UN General Assembly, by Resolution 51 by 95, invited UN member states to observe the International Day for Tolerance on 16 November with activities directed towards both educational establishments and the wider public. You can also involve tolerance is a respect, acceptance, and appreciation of the rich diversity of our world's cultures, or forms of expression, and ways of being human. In 1996, the UN General Assembly adopted through Resolution 51 by 95, proclaiming 16th November as International Day for Tolerance. This action followed by the adoption of Declaration of Principles on Tolerance by UNESCO's member states on 16th November 1995. Among other things, the declaration affirms that tolerance is neither indulgence nor indifference. It is respect and appreciation of the rich variety of our world's cultures or forms of expressions and ways of being human. Tolerance recognizes the universal human rights and fundamental freedoms of others. Peoples are naturally diverse. Only tolerance can ensure the survival of mixed communities in every region of the globe. And UNESCO Manjit Singh Prize for the promotion of tolerance and nonviolence in 1995 to mark the United Nations Year for Tolerance and the 125th anniversary of the birth of Mahatma Gandhi. UNESCO created a prize for promotion of tolerance and nonviolence. The UNESCO's Madanjit Prize. This prize rewards significant activities in the scientific, artistic, cultural, or communication fields aimed at the promotion of spirit of tolerance or nonviolence. The creation of the prize has been inspired by the ideals of UNESCO's constitutions that proclaims the peace, if it is not to fail, must be founded on the intellectual and moral solidarity of the mankind. Establishing a culture of peace and sustainable development are the heart of UNESCO's mandate. Training and research in sustainable development are among the priorities, as well as human rights education, skills for peaceful regulations, good governance, Holocaust remembrance, and prevention of conflict and peace building has been a major initiative by United Nations and UNESCO. At each of these key moments that have marked contemporary history, UNESCO has supported the peaceful development of societies by contributing to the construction and consolidation of democracy and the development of democratic institutions, especially in times of transition. Since its foundation, the organization seeks to promote aspirations of all people, especially young men and women, to strive for the realization of shared universal values such as tolerance, pluralism, the respect of human rights, freedom, and dialogue, while underlining the decisive role of education and human rights. UNESCO focuses on issues such as governance, democratic institutions, citizenship, freedom of expression, representation of young men and women, and their active participation in decision-making process in socio-economic and cultural development. The organization is inherently a place for democratic debate, a platform for exchanges where democratic values are promoted through tolerance, pluralism, and respect for human beings and human rights, freedom, and dialogue. Education for peace and human rights is a fundamental building block in the process as a catalyst for fostering global citizenship. On the ground, UNESCO is committed to actively participate in the consolidation of a democratic culture, especially by assisting countries in the Arab region with special emphasis on the capacity building of young women and men in civic education, civic engagement, and human rights with the aim of practical participation in the development of a community governed by democratic institutions and fostering rights, inclusion, and non-discrimination. While important advancements have been achieved in many areas, societies are still plagued by discrimination, racism, and inequalities. None of the multifaceted and complex challenges of our times can be tackled effectively without inclusion. This is resounding message of Agenda 2030 and its pledge to leave no one behind. To transform that vision into reality, in a multicultural world, action must be anchored in human rights and gender equality and promote openness, empathy, and other shared values. This is a cornerstone of the UNESCO's normative and operational work, which advances respect, protection, and fulfillment of the rights in areas where UNESCO has a clear comparable advantage and expertise. So cities play an important role in promoting diversity and inclusion, targeting the most disadvantaged groups, such as persons with disabilities, indigenous peoples, youth, migrants and refugees, vulnerable women and girls, and elderly. In an increasing urban world, it is from cities that many of the greatest societal challenges emerge. So it is in the cities that they must be faced, from growing inequalities to poverty and discrimination in all its forms. As centers of migration, diversity, and connectivity, cities are also sites of innovation, exchange, learning, dialogue, and cooperation, and are as such the very spaces in very creative solutions to the contemporary challenges will be found. Moreover, drawing on an expertise of more than 25 years in breaking the silence on the slave trade and slavery, UNESCO highlights the links between history of the slave route and also modern expressions of prejudice, racism, and discrimination. UNESCO also emphasizes the contribution of enslaved people to receiving societies through the identification, preservation, and promotion of sites and itineraries of memory. In response to these challenges and by applying a human rights based approach and a gender lens, UNESCO is working with member states, local stakeholders, and various partners through dialogue, capacity building, and advocacy from the right to education and right to science, to the right to cultural diversity and the right to freedom of expression. Fundamental human rights are both the universal expression of the values and ideals around which the UNESCO is united and a call to action to ensure these standards are mainstay of its mission. UNESCO anchors in human rights, inclusion, and non discrimination its cooperation with cities towards SDGs 5, 11, and 16, as well as the new urban agenda. It also contributes to achieving SDGs target 4.7. Education transforms lives and is the heart of UNESCO's mission to build peace, eradicate poverty, and drive sustainable development. It is a human right for all throughout life. The organization is the only United Nations agency with a mandate to cover all aspects of education. It has been entrusted to lead the Global Education 2030 agenda through Sustainable Development Goal 4. UNESCO provides a global regional leadership in education, strengthens education systems worldwide, and responds to the global challenges through education with gender equality as an underlying principle. It works encompasses quality educational development from preschool to higher education and beyond. Freedom of expression and the rule of law. UNESCO cooperates with judiciary and security forces to support their vital role in reinforcing the three P's: prevention, protection, and prosecution to guarantee journalists' safety and end impunity for crimes against them. We raise the capacities of judicial actors and law enforcement agents on the international and regional standards on the freedom of expression, access to the information, and the safety of journalists through massive open online courses, MOOCs, on the ground training and workshops, and of the publications of toolkits and guidelines. We do this with the framework of the UN Plan of Action of Journalists and the issues of impunity.
The legitimate limits to freedom of expression, the three-part test. Freedom of expression is a fundamental right, enshrined in Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which states that everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. This right is also an enabling right, ensuring openness, transparency, and accountability in democratic societies. However, freedom of expression is not an absolute right and may be lawfully restricted in specific and limited conditions. Under international human rights law, and specifically Article 19 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, or ICCPR, the three-part test determines whether a restriction on freedom of expression is legitimate. Any restriction on freedom of expression must thus be provided for by law, pursue a legitimate aim, and be necessary for a legitimate purpose. Part 1. Restrictions must be provided for by law. A restriction to freedom of expression should be provided for by a prior existing law or binding norm, adopted by competent authorities, and which is formulated with sufficient precision to enable citizens to regulate their conduct accordingly. The law or norm must therefore be clear, publicly accessible, and easily understood by everyone. Otherwise, it would risk having a chilling effect on free speech by broadening the scope of permissible restrictions. Part 2. Restrictions must pursue a legitimate aim. Article 19, paragraph 3 of the ICCPR details 4 essential grounds for restrictions. 1. Respect of the rights or reputations of others. 2. The protection of public health. 3. The protection of national security or of public order. And 4. The protection of morals. These grounds for restrictions must be narrowly framed in order to ensure compliance with international law provisions. Part 3. Restrictions must be necessary for the protection or promotion of a legitimate purpose. Restrictions should be effective, proportionate, and the least restrictive possible to achieve the legitimate end pursued. However, this criteria of necessity and proportionality is often the most complex according to international standards. Courts and other public authorities should thus consider the context in which the restriction is applied. For instance, a restriction in favor of national security might be justifiable in times of war, but not in times of peace. The three-part test sets a high standard to justify and clearly express the legitimacy of a restriction to the fundamental right to freedom of expression. In our rapidly changing digital environment, it is all the more important to reinforce the rule of law and the application of the three-part test to guarantee every citizen's right to freedom of expression and access to information.
So with this, we shall conclude today's commemorations, and we will move on to commemorations tomorrow. See you all tomorrow at the same time. Take care. Good night. Before leaving, kindly fill up the feedback form.